doing today? So today I just wanted to go over my focus group about the preferred methods of communication. And this was a very, very successful and interesting group because um, everybody was participating, everybody was able to bounce off each other, and I think it was very productive. Um, so one of the biggest challenges was trying to get everybody together in the same room at the same time. We went through a couple days where some people were available at a certain time and a couple of the other people weren't. And it came up to Saturday, and there were a couple of us that were ready to go, and a couple of us that weren't really ready to go or prepared for the project. So I decided to take it upon myself to recruit a couple of others and to get some fresh perspectives on the new project. Um, so when we were talking about the preferred methods of communication with different types of people, like friends, professors, acquaintances, your significant other, strangers, things like that, I found it interesting that the more the, based off of my research and my feedback, I learned that based on how well you know somebody and how familiar you are with them, the more likely you're able to use more forms of communication. For example, many of my participants said that the closer they were with someone, they were more likely to use things like texting, calling, Snapchat, Twitter, or Instagram to communicate. And they would also have different types of conversations. So, for things like Twitter and Instagram, my participants were telling me that they would send more like jokes or have a different types of conversations than if they were calling or texting. So if they were calling or texting, then they would have more common conversations like how are you doing, how's your day going, things of that nature. So I thought that was very interesting because I would think that the more you get to know somebody, the more secure your communication method is. Like, say if you had a significant other, you guys text or call every day, or just call every day. I would think there's more of a consistent basis on that, but it seems to be just more open with the way you communicate, with the avenues of communication. And when I asked the participants about family, um, most of them were either calling or they were video chatting with their family members. It was not a whole lot of texting unless they were asking for something or anything like that, because they would also inform me that the older that the participant was that they were talking to in their family, then the more likely they were able to use things like calling, or not really texting as much, but mainly things like calling and video chatting, because it was simpler for the older generations to kind of get a grasp on things. One of my participants was telling me that it was very difficult for her to text her grandparents and things like that because it's not really something that they're used to, and it's not really something that they have, grown up with like our generation. Um, I think that was very interesting also because it shows that they're able to sort of go get on their level in a sense and kind of meet them where they're at. And the younger that the person in their family was, the more likely they would prefer using the method of face to face communication because they were also informing me that the younger that they were, they wouldn't want them to get too attached to their technology and their phones and things like that because even though we did grow up with technology around, we didn't always have our iPads and our iPhones and things like that. And they were saying how destructive that could be if a very young person was attached to their iPhone or iPad or iPod or any of those nature things. And with professors, one of my participants I was very intrigued by this answer because it's not very common at all. She was the only person that said she would more likely text her professor because I guess she feels a sort of comfort with her professor and he's able to sort of be casual and be kind of with the times with talking to his students and relaying information back and forth. So, but most of the other participants did explain that they would rather email or meet face to face with their professor, which was sort of an answer that I was expecting. And I also asked them if how they would communicate with people they usually saw every day but didn't really know that well, usually said hi to in the halls, and all of them usually said that they would more likely just stay face to face with that because they don't really know the person that well, and you know um, they don't really see them that often. They're not too close with them, so that was also an answer I was expecting. But the final question I asked them was how they would communicate with a person that they grew up in the same neighborhood with or next to, like their neighbors. And most of them said, they would just simply go over to their house and talk to them. But one of my people, she said that since she lives in the country, and their houses are not so close together, that they've become so close that they're able to talk and text and call and things like that. So they're able to use a couple of forms of communication like texting and calling. And I found that very interesting because I personally, I usually just talk face to face with my neighbors and just go in their driveway, hang out, go to their house, and many of the others also would use that form of communication, the face to face, and getting to see them and getting to talk to them, ask them how everything's going. And I found it very interesting that was the case for the person that lived in the country because it does make sense, but yeah, I just thought that was very interesting because usually you just go over to somebody's house. I guess just drawn from my experience and I guess the experience of others that I've talked to. Um, again, thank you for listening, and this has been a very intriguing and enriching focus group, and that is about it. That does it. And again, thank you for listening.